Hello, I'm Lindsay Johnson, Fiscal Sponsorship and Communications Manager at Southeast Uplift. Thank you for joining us today. This is our final session in the seven-part House of Development webinar series presented by and in partnership with COGEO. This session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. You are welcome to have your camera on or off, whatever is most comfortable for you. We have enabled captions. If you have any additional access needs, feel free to post those in the chat. We ask that you remain muted during the presentation and save questions for the end. We have reserved time for a brief Q&A. Now I am going to hand the mic over to our presenter, Chelsi, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, great to be here. And as Lindsay mentioned, this is our final seventh session of the House of Development webinar series. So really great to have this kind of completionary session with everybody. So for a little context and background on who we are, I'm Director of Client Services with COGEO, and we provide various support and advice services for nonprofits across various sectors, really supporting specifically the small to medium-sized nonprofits base, because that's where we found that we can really have the greatest impact. And what we do is really accelerate smaller size, medium-sized nonprofit growth. So our focus is on organizations with grand missions and visions, but may just need a little jumpstart to really accelerate their growth and get to where they're envisioning themselves. So we have clients varying across the United States and collectively have over 40 years of fundraising experience. And throughout our consulting journey, we have successfully raised hundreds of millions of dollars for various 501c3s, again, spanning various sectors. So now that you have a little context of who we are, I want to dive right into the lessons. Again, this is just a little recap of where we have been, where we're headed. Again, seventh and final session of our House of Development series. And for a recap, this is the House of Development. So this is, again, for those of you who may not have tuned into our previous session, I want to just provide a little overview here. The House of Development is a tool created by COGEO to conceptualize the building blocks of a successful 501c3 and explain why development is so crucial in achieving your organizational goals. So this is intended to be looked at from the bottom up with this walkway or pathway here, the garden, representing communications and marketing. So that includes things like your website, social media, e-newsletters. And then as you enter the house, you'll see this first level here is what we consider retail or unrestricted giving. So that encompasses annual and membership giving as well as events. And as you move through the House of Development up to the second floor, you'll see corporations and foundations, major gifts, and planned gifts. So this is what we consider non-retail giving or restricted giving. And you'll see top two levels here are grayed out intentionally. We have not covered these in this particular webinar series as we wanted to really hyper-focus on these first couple levels of the house. These upper levels, capital campaign and transformational gifts, are usually a little bit more advanced. You really need to build this initial base before you can dive into that. But to help you conceptualize, we have stewardship right above capital campaign and underneath transformational gift, because that is, again, by intent. We found it's a useful way to visualize it because stewardship is a really key piece in leading to a transformational gift. So, if you are just stopping at this second level for now, you can also consider it flat roof stewardship at the top. Right, so goals and context for today's session. First, we're going to define stewardship. So really build an awareness of what stewardship is. We're also going to discuss relevancy. So understanding the tactical role of stewardship within each room of the House of Development. We'll also touch on readiness. So developing a better awareness of how to analyze and evaluate your organization's current stewardship practices in all fundraising areas. And finally, data management, just discussing how clean and organized data systems are really critical in evaluating effective stewardship over time. And in line with that also, at the end of this session, I will be providing a mini recap of Salesforce specifically, That's our preferred CRM platform. It's free for nonprofits and can really scale with your agency. So I'll provide you a little mini session of what that looks like. All right, so first, definition of stewardship. Simply, stewardship can be defined as the acts performed by an agency or 501c3, our term, you can alternate them. But yeah, the acts performed by an agency with a donor after a donor has contributed to an organization that aim to indirectly or directly validate the purpose for the contribution, as well as promote the likelihood of additional contributions from the donor in the future. And as you'll use moves management to implement this stewardship strategy, as a reminder, moves management is a series of intentional donor-centric moves to keep a donor invested in an agency over time. And we have discussed moves management in previous sessions if you want to take a look at those as well. Okay, so during this presentation, I'm going to dive into each room of the House of Development and just explain give you an overview of what stewardship looks like at in each room, or kind of for each entity type. So first, let's start with annual and membership stewardship. So first, you need to provide a formal acknowledgement from your agency whenever a donation comes in from your annual membership or membership giving program. So this is just a legal requirement for the 501c3 to have their status or not. So it's essentially just a statement that no goods or services were provided in exchange for the transaction. You'll also want to provide some additional acknowledgements that are really donor-centric. So this is great for stewardship, just adding some additional messaging to make it more personal. You'll also want to provide some agency updates, so messaging from the executive director and other key stakeholders. And frequency is really important here to avoid any fatigue on the part of the donor. We do encourage email in these cases, but also make sure that you're not providing updates every day and really make sure that the content is relevant to your donor. And the key here is really to make the messaging clear, relevant, and make it important. So don't be spamming them. So trying to find that balance. Another piece here is your agency newsletter, blogs, updates in digital and paper or paper. So I know, some agencies still do little mini, maybe paper newsletters, but e-newsletter is fine. And of course, the trend that we're seeing in recent years. Digital storytelling is also important here. So videos and photos. Just an additional layer and kind of multimedia communication. Social media content also can be utilized at this stage, as well as annual reports. If your agency does annual reports, this isn't a requirement for agencies, but if you do them, just make sure you house them online rather than printing them. These tend to not be quite as relevant now that 990s are public and people can access any agency's financial health and really access that information online. But I know some agencies do still utilize annual reports. All right. So before I dive into the next room, I do want to just highlight, again, your use of your CRM, your customer or client relations management system. So this is platforms like Salesforce, Bloomerang, Little Green Light. And I'm going to tie this specifically to annual giving, but I want to make sure that you understand that you need to use your CRM at every level of the house and for all fundraising activities. So you really want to make sure that you are tracking your donors and their transactions with your agency. So this will really allow you to understand who your donors are and allows you to my previous point, make sure that the content you're sending is relevant to your donors and members. So yeah, you can create an email series that really takes them to certain landing pages that's most relevant to them based on the information that you gather in your CRM. Okay. Now diving into the next room of the House of Development, and this is events stewardship. So some common events for context are galas, cultivation events, virtual events, fun runs and walks, or thon events, and of course, many others. So stewardship should really occur at each stage of the event, which is pre-event, in-event, and post-event. So at the pre-event level, you'll want to do an immediate recognition or acknowledgement for any event asset acquired. So for instance, if you're getting goods or services or donations, make sure that you immediately react and give the donor a call or send them an immediate email recognition. And this can also be for volunteers. Really, again, any asset acquisition, anything that is coming in to support the event, you'll want to immediately recognize it. At the in-event stage, you want to make sure that you have a donor and sponsor recognition or event guide, as well as signage. So also recognition of any signage where it makes sense for event sponsors at your event. And then at the post-event stage, you'll want to provide a recap of the event and success to everyone who attended, as well as the volunteers. We also recommend, this is a great touch for just your general community, even those who couldn't attend, because it can still spur on interest and maybe increase attendance in the following year whenever you next host the event. You'll also want to do donor-centric moves on a quarterly rotation here. So I will talk about this more later, but if there are large donors or large acquirers, so folks maybe who raised a lot through a thon, for instance, you want to make sure that you steward them as you would a major donor. And again, I'll talk about that a little more in a bit and what that actually looks like. And on to the second floor of House of Development, starting with corporations and foundations. I'll preface this also by saying this room requires the most formalized procedures, just because the nature of corporations, they're very interested in return on investment. So they need a really clear outline of what their expectations are in terms of, as it relates to results of the sponsorship or donation. And foundations in line with that are also, they're in the business of giving away money, and they really have to give to more than one organization. So if you've been selected, you need to do top-notch stewardship practices to really differentiate yourself from other grantees. So when you reapply, if you reapply, you'll stand out to them. So best practices here are providing quarterly updates from the Director of Development or Executive Director to the corporate or foundation contact person. So that will be really just a highlight of their annual contribution divided by 4. So how, a quarter of their funding was used each quarter. So success stories. So in terms of actual content, you want to include success stories, results from the application of the funds. And because the donation in these cases are typically in kind of on the larger end, the 5 or 6 digit level, you'll want to divide the contribution again by 4 and explain what the contribution did in that particular quarter. So as an example, let's say you receive a 10,000 grant in, let's say, March. So you want to send a formal thank you in March. And then 3 months later, so around June, there should be an acknowledgement of what the 2,500 accomplished. Then 3 months later, in September, you'll want to do the same thing, another 2,500. And again, 3 months later in December, same thing. Then in March, you'll want to do again the same thing, that final 2,500, how it was used, what occurred in that past quarter. And then hopefully there will be an opportunity to re-up the opportunity or reapply. So you can maybe reapply to the foundation or reach out to the corporation to schedule a meeting to potentially get another sponsorship. All right. And next best practice here is significant milestones. And this is really more for corporations. So you'll want to show that the goals and metrics of whatever program the corporation has shown a preference for, if any, have been achieved. So this is also, you'll want to make sure that you notify them when your obligations have been achieved in terms of any contractual obligations that you may have, maybe you signed a sponsorship agreement and want to make sure that you are hitting on each element of the contract. And demographics reach, this is also more for corporations. So these are metrics maybe you realize for the quarter. So for instance, impressions, virtual impressions, facility visits, etc. So if the ROI, return on investment that the company is looking for, if the metric has been realized, maybe the facility visits or impressions have been reached. And for a little context, again, impressions are total number of times maybe an ad or piece of content is displayed to potential viewers within a given period. Just for a little context, it's kind of a marketing term you might not be familiar with, but let's say that facility visits or impressions were achieved. You want to make sure that you report to the corporation on a quarterly basis, or whatever you've agreed upon, to make sure that you notify them that has been accomplished. And thankfully, this is no longer so much a guessing game with current technology. So you can measure, for instance, some impressions by your website visitors, number of clicks on your website, a lot of different types of metrics that you can measure now. Okay, and moving on to the middle room of our House of Development. And this is for major gifts. And you'll see the content on this page has a lot of overlap with corporations and foundations, which is nice. So it allows you to it gives you a little bit of crossover in your procedures. But a little bit, it is a little variable. So I'm going to go over this in a little more detail here. So again, here you'll want to provide quarterly updates to major donors. And if you'll remember from our major gift session, a major gift is 1/10 or 1% of your overall development budget, with the idea that if you raise 1,000 of those gifts, you'll meet your budget. So the major gift thresholds really vary agency to agency. So you want to make sure that you look at your budget, measure it with the gift as you implement your stewardship practices. So again, here you'll want to provide quarterly updates from the director of development or executive director to the donor entity. So this might be an individual or a family, a couple. So the quarterly updates really will be the same concept that I described for corporations and foundations, but the last move for the year is going to be scheduling a major gift meeting. So again, quarterly moves management rotation, and you want to make sure that it's really hyper donor centric based on what the donor wants to see, how they want to be communicated with. You want to make sure that you are providing updates based on what they're most interested in programmatically, or what activity they want to learn about. Just make sure that you really know what their interest is. So you want to show how funds were leveraged. Again, provide some success stories, results from the application of funds, and significant milestones. So if this is relevant for the donor, make sure that you communicate that to them as well. Also, goals and metrics achieved. Specifically, this is great for investor type donors. Each donor might have a different preference for what they want to see. Some donors are really corporate minded, so you want to show them those metrics if that is something they care about. So one item specific to individuals rather than corporations is the case statement. So make sure that your case statement is really up to date for the annual meeting when you meet with your donor, and are ready to schedule that renewal meeting at the time of their previous donation in the prior year. So as I mentioned, that last quarterly stewardship update, you'll want to also work on scheduling a meeting with the donor to discuss potentially renewing their gift. And during that conversation, you'll have the case statement handy, be able to be prepared to talk about updates, how their funds were used in person, real time. All right. Now on to our last room of the second floor of the House of Development, which is planned gifts stewardship. All right. So for your planned giving program, you'll actually want to start stewardship at the time of launching the program before you've even acquired any donations through the program, which seems a little counterintuitive, but I'll walk you through that. So for Legacy Society marketing, and if you'll recall, we did discuss planned giving in our last session, but Legacy Society is really just a generic term used to describe that program, and Legacy Society members are those who have a planned gift going towards your organization. So Legacy Society marketing, you'll want to start with initial program launch communication that outlines program details and opportunities. So this is really upfront stewarding to acquire donors. And it's going to be similar to an appeal, actually, which is also essentially a form of stewardship, because you are conveying updates or good news from your agency to potential donors. In this case, it'll just be in the purpose of acquiring a donation rather than stewarding a previous gift. So at a minimum, you really need biannual communication outlining opportunities to select demographics. So for instance, for independent schools and university, the dates are pretty straightforward. Usually it's after the 30th reunion for independent schools, maybe after the 25th reunion for universities. So really kind of making sure that you're hitting at a time when the donor is likely to be considering a planned gift, depending on their age. You should also encourage bequest program designations in all external marketing. So this, for instance, can be a blurb in newsletters, appeals, or general organizational update communications. So really make sure that folks know about the Legacy Society, your planned giving program, and know how to get in touch and learn more if they want to do a planned gift. You'll also want to do an annual luncheon. So really treat the Legacy Society members like investors, which is what they are. They're doing a long-term investment in your agency, and you'll want to make sure that you really steer them so they don't change their minds and back out of the planned gift. So we found that annual luncheons can really go a long way to making them feel recognized and comfortable with the gift. So in this case, once you have a sense of who your Legacy Society members are, which you will know because your marketing materials have urged them to let you know and reach out if they're interested in becoming a Legacy Society member, you really need to treat them, again, like investors or even board members. So if they've put you in their will or set up a trust for you, you need to have an annual lunch to really treat them as an insider again. And generally, this is going to look like maybe an hour and a half. And what occurs is you'll have the executive director or a key leader at the agency step up and give a State of the Union update about your agency to really ensure that the individual and the Legacy Society members, they know. And as far as some donor-centric moves, you want to treat them like major donors. So again, 4 quarterly moves to really make sure that the bequest is not revoked, to my previous point. And we're seeing also a major pass-through of wealth in recent years with the baby boomer generation. So you really need to start capitalizing on this potential as soon as possible. We've seen, 25% in some cases of annual budgets being raised through planned giving. So this is really critical, and stewarding it can be incredibly effective in ensuring that, for one thing, again, the bequest is not revoked, and also that you are continuing to gain new Legacy Society members and keeping that process moving. All right. So now that you have a sense of the structure of stewardship for each key entity, I want to provide you with a high-level overview of Salesforce, which is, again, our preferred CRM database because it is, for one thing, free for nonprofits, and it's also scalable. So it has the ability to really grow with your agency. So I'm going to switch my screen here. So I can give you this little mini tutorial. All right. So you'll see here, I want to walk you through some key terms and terminology that Salesforce uses so you kind of have an understanding. And even if you won't be using Salesforce, maybe you prefer another platform like, as I mentioned before, Bloomerang, Little Green Light are 2 common ones. You'll see some overlap in the process. So it'll give you an idea of potentially your interest in Salesforce, or as you explore other options, it'll give you a baseline. All right. So first thing here, I want to start off with campaigns. So campaigns are really an overarching structure for Salesforce and is really helpful in organizing your various fundraising activities. So this is kind of the main list of current campaigns. And I'm going to select this Development 2023 campaign. And then I'm going to go to campaign hierarchy before I dive into what this page is, just to give you a visual of what this looks like. So typically how we structure campaigns is we will create a development and then the fiscal year, so in this case, 2023 campaign. And then within that, we like to house different sub-campaigns. So we have corporations, foundations, and individuals as the typical defaults. So you can really track your activities at each within each of these entity types. So I'm going to select, let's go to individuals. So this is the record view for the individuals campaign. And you'll see here as some basic details, information about the campaign, maybe how much you've raised, how many leads or contacts are in the campaign. And I will touch on leads and contacts in a little bit here. You also see some related list quick links. So you'll see you can select campaign members to see a list of who's a member of the campaign statuses, as well as opportunities, which is really just Salesforce's term for any revenue coming in. So donations, grants. So this is, campaigns again are just really the overarching structure that you can utilize in helping you organize your data in Salesforce. All right, and from there, I'm going to dive into leads first. So leads, contacts, and accounts up here are really three key object types in Salesforce. Leads you can consider essentially the temporary side of Salesforce. So leads you can think of as individuals or entities that have not transacted yet with your organization. So maybe they haven't donated yet, but you're prospecting them, or potentially they're interested in getting more involved with your organization, but haven't quite reached that level yet. You put them as a lead. So I do have a sample lead here that I'm going to select. So this is the lead record view. And you'll see again here some details. So we have, company, let's say they work at, let's say they work at Nike, you can list that there. Title, I put, company affiliation as just a generic kind of sample. Program manager, let's say they work as a program manager, so you can keep a record of who they are, who they're affiliated with, as well as any information that is relevant and that you have access to. So let's say you have their mobile number, that's great. You have an email, if you have their company street address, all that information. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to go over to, actually, I'm going to go back to leads first. And another piece of leads is also a way to track foundation outreach and grant writing. I'm going to select this sample foundation type. So see, it looks the same as the lead I was just on. It's the same record type. But in this case, I have for name UNK, so it just stands for unknown. And then the company is Sample Foundation. So let's say maybe it's Meyer Memorial Trust, for instance. So in this case, it's a great way to track foundations and where you're at with them. So right now the lead status is open, not contacted, but you can change lead statuses so that it reflects maybe where you're at with an application. You can create custom lead status types. So here we have maybe application submitted, application approved, decline. So let's say it was submitted and approved, just save it. And then you'd be able to keep a record of where you're at with each given foundation, along with other relevant information for that foundation. So email, and down here you'll see some information, maybe password and username if there's an online portal that you're applying through, amount awarded if that comes through, deadline, requested amounts. So great way to make sure that you're tracking all the information that is relevant for the foundation. And with that, I will dive into contacts. So we have a sample contact here. I'm going to select that. And you'll see the contact record view is also very similar to the lead view, but there is more information provided because Salesforce assumes that you will have more information on a contact rather than a lead, because a contact is someone that has transacted. So you know a little more about them. They're more maybe invested in your agency. Maybe they made a donation. Maybe they are a strong supporter. So it provides more fields here for you to populate with any information you have on the contact. So same thing here, you have some contact information, their address, if you have that on file, as well as their donation information. And yeah, just various information that you might have, as well as soft credit total. Just real briefly here, soft credits are, you know, donations that the individual may have made maybe through a donor advised fund. So donation that comes in indirectly through the donor that they might have cultivated for you. And you'll see here, donation information, have 5,000. So I created a sample opportunity. Let's say this person gave a donation of $5,000. I'm going to select opportunities and go, you'll see here, we just have one, but if this person made more donations, you'd see a full list here of all their donations that they made in the history of their interaction with your organization. I'm going to go ahead and select opportunity. That takes me over to opportunities. And again, opportunities are really just anything coming into your organization, any revenue. So in-kind gifts, donations, grants, sponsorships, anything along those lines. So you'll see that, you know, there's an opportunity name associated with your primary contact, the contact that we just created here. The amount, which is 5,000. Close date is when the funds were received. Stage is closed won. There's also a couple other options here, and you can also customize these fields depending on where you're at with your agency if you need other fields here. But closed won is when the funds have been, again, received. A couple others, maybe they've been pledged, maybe you're prospecting. Closed lost, maybe the person wasn't able to make that donation for whatever reason. So you can really track the history of the opportunity. And what I want to cover over here is tasks. So another great feature in Salesforce is the ability to create various tasks, which is great for tracking stewardship activities and making sure that you're hitting that quarterly cadence. So whenever a donation, let's say that the 5,000 constitutes a major gift for this particular agency, you'll want to create the quarterly tasks. So for instance, quarterly stewardship 1, and just select it here. Stewardship 1 and has some task information. So the due date is November, since the donation came in August. So that's the first quarterly stewardship. Second is going to be in February up here. Third is going to be in May 2024. And then the final one is scheduling a major gift meeting along with that fourth stewardship touch in August. So making sure that you are reaching out to them around the time of their previous donation to make that renewal request. And with that, I'm going to dive over to accounts. Okay, so you'll see 2 accounts here as samples. So first you see the sample contact household. Anytime that you create a individual contact in Salesforce, Salesforce will automatically create also a household account. So making it's great for tracking if you have a family involved with your organization, a couple. Some of our clients, they're youth sports organizations, so we have the kids associated with the household account. So another great way to just make sure you're keeping everyone, you really understand the relationship of your donors, keeping everyone hyper-organized. We also have a sample company here. So I'm going to just go ahead and select the company first. So Salesforce is great. So you can have a account record type, so you can track, you know, if it's an organization or a household. You can also track the type. So if it's a corporation or a foundation. You can also list any relevant information, again here, phone number, website, address, and it'll also track any of your donations coming in through the account. And I'm going to go back to accounts here, and I'm going to go to the households, and you'll see it looks pretty much the same. Just has, you know, billing address. Also has some information on the households, formal and informal greetings, which automatically populates with the person's first and last name or first name. and as well as all the donation giving history for the households, which ties in with the individual. So a lot of this is just auto-populated by Salesforce to help keep you organized. Right. So with that, do you want to jump over to also tasks at the top here? So right now we just have 4 tasks in Salesforce, but this is where you can also just view a comprehensive list of all the tasks you have. You know, right now it's set to recently viewed, but you can also select it to if any open or overdue tasks, so you could really make sure that you are staying on top of any stewardship tasks coming in. And with the remaining time that we have here, I do want to walk you through creating a sample donation, just so you have a little bit of an extra understanding of what that looks like. So let's do it with the company. Let's say the company has given you a donation or sponsorship. Let's go to new donation here. So I'm on the company name. I'm going to go to new donation. Let's say it came in today. So close date is 8/30/2023. And it automatically populates with an opportunity name, which is what I want. You can also customize it based on your preference. I usually just leave it as is. Stage is closed 1. But again, here we would update it if, you know, it's prospecting, pledged, whatever stage it might be in. I'm going to leave it as closed 1 for now. Amount, so let's say it's 10,000. And then in the primary campaign source, you want to select the campaign source that makes sense. So in this case, it's going to be corporations. If this was an individual donation, you'd want to select individuals. Same thing with foundations. If it was a grant coming in from a foundation, you could select foundations. So again, this is a great way to make sure that you understand your funds coming in and what agency or entity type it's associated with. I'm going to just save that. Right. And you'll see now there's opportunities. There's 1 there. I'm going to select it. And I'm going to select it again to take me to the opportunity record view. And since this is, let's say this is also a major gift for the agency, I want to also create some quarterly stewardship tasks. So I'm going to walk you through that as well. All right. So subject, let's go with quarterly stewardship 1. Due date. In this case, you know, you can really do this any way you want. You know, if you want to do, you know, the end of, you know, a couple months from now, or if you want to do the first, I usually like to set stewardship tasks for the first of each quarter, just so you can kind of have them all coming in at one time and assess, you know, what you get to win. They can really handle this any way you want, as long as it's hitting that general quarterly cadence. So let's go with, I'm going to treat this, since it's coming in towards at the very end of the month, I'm going to treat it as if it was coming in September. So I'm going to go out to December 1st. Yeah. And yeah, it's associated with the opportunity, related to the opportunity, assigned to COGEO Consulting. You can also change this to any other users that you have in Salesforce. So you can assign it to, you know, if you have your executive director or director of development, whoever the task should be assigned to. Status is not started. You can also maybe update it when it's been completed or if it's in progress. Now let's just leave it as not started. So now we have the task associated with the opportunity, and then you just want to go through and continue really following that process. Quarterly stewardship 1, that one was set to December. Okay. I'm going to do, you can type it in, or you can go up here and schedule it like that, really however you want to do it. So let's say March 1st, 2024. You can also associate it with the contacts or just the opportunity. Contacts would just be the organization or if there's a contact associated with the company, then you can do that. But usually the opportunity is sufficient. And just save it there. Go with the quarterly stewardship 3 here. Let's go with June 1st, 2024. And then quarterly stewardship 4. And I'm going to also do schedule meeting as quarterly stewardship 4 to make sure that you are reaching out to them to set up a meeting on top of providing them that final update. Great. And then from there, you'll be able to mark them off when you complete them. You can just do this little checkbox, which is great, or update it like this. You can, if it's not started, it's in progress. Maybe if you're waiting on something else, or if it's been deferred, let's say it's maybe in progress, and then you can save it. So Salesforce again provides a lot of maneuverability and really great tools to help keep you on task and on track to meet quarterly stewardship, to really cultivate those gifts and your donors. Right. Yeah, so I think with that, again, want to just provide you the really high level overview of Salesforce. As you can see, there's a lot of different functionality in Salesforce. So again, this is why it can really scale with your organization, with your entity, or with your agency, and really grow with you. So again, it's our recommended. Salesforce also has some really excellent what they call trailheads, essentially just guides for walking you through various aspects of the platform. So really great utilization, but again, it's not the only one. So as you grow into beginning to use this area, looking at your options, just take a look what is going to work for you and what you can foresee being really optimal for your organization, as well as, of course, what is feasible for your budget. And with that, I'm going to switch back to our presentation here. And I want to open it up to any, Q&A, any questions that might be relevant here. So feel free to chime in or, drop anything in the comments. Okay.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, and thank you for joining us. We'll get this posted online shortly, and I'll send the link out to everyone who is registered. Have a wonderful evening.